Thank you so much for joining me today. I just want to remind you to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Connie for daily inspiration. And I would love for you to DM. We're really heavily getting into Instagram as well as TikTok to really reach more of you. And again, you can find me at Dr. Connie and I'll be a lot more active going forward in those two platforms. If you haven't already, please do share my podcast as well as subscribe to Mind Your Health. We're pretty much anywhere that podcasts are offered, Spotify, iTunes, and Google, and anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. So today I want to talk about COVID implications and autoimmunity. As many of you guys know, I've chosen to get the COVID vaccination back in the middle of March. And I ended up getting Pfizer. And it's created a lot of really mysterious symptoms. And it's really triggered my autoimmune, flare. And it's really challenged me physically, physiologically, and health-wise. And while I have no regrets about getting the vaccination, it is a personal choice that you must make. There's so much unknowns with this new Delta variant that I wanted to kind of break down the facts and the science so you can make informed decisions about what's right for you, especially if you're on some type of biologic that compromises you immunologically, okay? With the current pandemic and the Delta variant surging, many of the autoimmune patients are concerned about risks of COVID infection. Not only the infection itself, but most have concerns about the risks of vaccination as well. And while many have gotten vaccinated with no side effects, many are on the fence about the vaccination, triggering their autoimmunity and remain skeptical. I've personally, as I mentioned, chosen to get the vaccination and have no regrets, but in full transparency, as I shared, since getting vaccinated, it has flared my autoimmune condition in the worst possible way. Since being in remission for, I'd say, over 8 years. The fatigue, pain, brain fog, and weakness kept me from performing at 100%. I used to be an Energizer bunny before the COVID vaccination, and then everything went south after that. I had mysterious infections and symptoms. And while many might argue it may not be the vaccine, I believe that was the only thing different from what I do because I keep tabs on exactly what I do, what I eat, my diet. Everything pretty much stays consistent. I also know many autoimmune patients who've gotten vaccination who are perfectly fine as well. So again, it's a personal choice. And this COVID affects people in very different ways. Some people die from it, and some people, it's like a cold, a minimal cold, right? My rheumatologist and I had a highly intelligent conversation about this, and he highly recommended it. And I pondered it and agonized over it. But because I wanted to travel, I had weddings to go to, as well as I was seeing patients who are immune compromised. I felt it a civil duty to get vaccinated is why I did. I'm not sure if I regret it. I wish I didn't have the response that I did from it, but it is what it is, right? And in my perspective, there are 3 common questions that patients have. Number 1 is, should autoimmune patients get vaccinated? Which vaccination is best, Pfizer, J&J, or the other one that we have, which is Moderna, right? Number 3 is, what if you're on an immunosuppressive regimen? Then what, right? The answer to this is that everyone is different. There is no right or wrong, just what the patient decides, as well as their response to the vaccination. And there's no way to know or predict how you're going to respond. So let's talk about autoimmunity and vaccination. The truth is, There are only 3 options for autoimmune patients currently. We are going through a pandemic and our lives have changed forever. Number 1 is to isolate yourself from the world. Number 2 is to vaccinate. Number 3 is to risk getting COVID, right? We know that the Delta variant is highly contagious, so the risks are high for option 3. Also, isolation is hard for patients as it's not practical and we can't live in a bubble. And vaccination also has its risks. The main concern would be that the antibodies can cross-react and cause autoimmune flares from the antibodies that kind of surges with the vaccination. This can result in getting a wider range of tissue damage, the autoimmunity, which is not ideal, likely what happened to me. Due to the higher viral load of the Delta variant, one can expect higher antibodies if one gets infected. So that's the risk that you have to take. On the other hand, the ingredients on the vaccine can also promote an autoimmune flare. So it's like lesser of the 2 evils, and this is what we're faced with. But I do believe it should be a personal choice that we should be able to decide, not somebody else forces us to do something, because there's a lot of social shame and social judgments being had regarding this topic. So really be careful who you share your concerns with, okay? So let's talk about isolation. Couldn't the patient just stay home and isolate as much as possible? Well, the problem is that most patients don't know how to self-isolate. They try to manage without fully understanding what isolation is. The common mistakes that they make is that if someone isn't sick, they're not infectious. This is completely incorrect. The virus can be present and also be transmitted in people who aren't symptomatic yet for up to 14 days before symptoms start, as well as when symptoms start. Second, most patients believe a negative PCR test or a negative PCR tested patient can't transmit the virus. The problem is that the PCR test is only sensitive on day 5 of the symptoms. On the 5th day, the likelihood, even on that day, of a positive test result in patient who is infected is only 70%. So 7 out of 10 people will be positive, right, on the 5th day, but 3 out of the 10 won't be positive. So that leaves us to shrug our shoulders and not fully understand, right? Nothing is foolproof at this time. Lastly, many think that they can't get COVID from vaccinated person. But the truth is that the Delta variant can be transmitted by vaccinated individuals as well. So just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that you're foolproof, right? The last statistics that I read from the Pfizer vaccine that I got was that it was only protective against the new Delta variant up to 30%. So I'm 70% exposed. And so I'm not sure how much that would help me, but I don't understand all the confusing research that goes both ways. So that's all I have for you on that topic for now. The third thing is immune suppression and vaccination. What if you're on immunosuppressive therapy, which is common in autoimmune patients? If you're on a T cell inhibiting therapy like Cellcept or a B cell inhibitor like Rituxan, you are likely to have compromised T and B cell mediated immunity, which is part of your immune system, in which case, despite the vaccination, isolation may be important. Testing for COVID antibodies may be recommended to decide on the booster shot, as the vaccination are not foolproof in protecting against infection. That would be my case as well. If the patient does have antibodies based on the antibody testing for COVID, it's useful to test periodically, 2 to 3 months, depending on the patient, to assess if the antibodies are truly protective, right? To vaccinate or not remember is a personal choice. There's so much we don't know, and we must stay compassionate toward each other and truly respect their own personal decisions. No finger pointing, no shaming, no judgments or opinions. We're navigating some, unknown territories today, and we're all doing it today. So it doesn't help us to really point our fingers at each other and go about it in that way. I hope this helped to shed some insight into what you can do. Next week, I want to go over some of the holistic therapies and supplements you might implement for COVID long haulers, which I know many autoimmune patients are struggling with. There's the ivermectin, NAD, IV, as well as the intramuscular injections, vitamin C, zinc, and selenium. I'll break all this down to make sure you make informed decisions about what route to take to protect you further from COVID. And with that in mind, I will go ahead and say goodbye for now. But remember, our cart to really work together is open for self-empowered healing program, both the VIP and elite program. So please check out the link below and really watch the webinar and the video series training where you can gain a lot of insights on your autoimmunity. It's a drastically different way to think and feel about your autoimmunity, questioning everything at the foundational level so that you can truly be at the healthiest version of yourself. And from that place, you do all the things to have whatever it is that you want in your life. Stop using a broken model is what I bring insight to. So click on the link below, watch the training video series before we close the cart, and I hope to see you on the inside. Thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. I'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.